The G20 Summit has officially opened in Johannesburg, South Africa, with US President Donald Trump absent. The White House says that Donald Trump is boycotting the event, stating that South Africa's focus on global cooperation in trade and climate action does not align with US policies. Amidst the US President's absence, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on G20 leaders to tackle trade barriers that put developing countries at a disadvantage. Speaking at a media briefing in Johannesburg, the UN chief said that the global body would be doing everything to guarantee an effective representation for developing countries. However, Guterres added that the United Nations does not have powers to reform the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank.
One thing I can guarantee is that in the action of the Secretariat of the UN, we will be doing everything to correct inequalities and injustices and to guarantee effective representation to developing countries. But we have not the power to reform the Security Council or to reform the IMF or the World Bank.
On the eve of the summit, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the African Union, while British Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed the Global Fund Pledge event in Sandton. The UK Prime Minister also met the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, in Joburg. Furthermore, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz left for Johannesburg to attend the G20 Summit from Cologne. Following this, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in South Africa to attend the G20 Summit. Shortly after his arrival, the Prime Minister held a bilateral with his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese. The talks focused on bolstering economic and defence ties with both countries. Apart from that, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and UAE's Crown Prince Sheikh Khaled bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan also arrived in Johannesburg to take part in the high-profile summit that aims to address critical global issues. With the G20 Summit underway, security has been strengthened at the Johannesburg venue.
We are ready. All system goes. We are at the implementation phase of our plan. We have been planning for so long. We have been planning for the mini events or mini summits. We have put all the systems. Each summit where there are challenges, we go back to the drawing board, we tighten, we put the relevant screw to make sure that we are not going to be faltering coming here.
Let's talk to our correspondent now, Kalden Ongmu. She is live in Johannesburg. Good to see you, Kalden Ongmu. The summit has officially begun. We understand the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is currently addressing the plenary and opening the function. What is at stake in this summit?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Eric. Leaders and officials from 42 nations have arrived. Currently, as we speak, President Ramaphosa, who's a South African president, is delivering his open remarks. Eric, there's a lot at stake here. You know, firstly, the big thing is the biggest economy in the world and the richest country in the world, the US, has boycotted this. The news of US boycotting overshadowed the summit. However, President Cyril Ramaphosa was very clear that the summit will go on with or without the US. President Ramaphosa has said that he's very confident that the declarations will be announced at the end of the summit, which is tomorrow. And we've heard actually from the sources that G20 Sherpas, who had been deliberating and negotiating over the last few days on the declaration, they finally have a draft declaration which they will submit to the leaders today. Eric, today the leaders will be speaking on various topics, especially when it comes to trade, climate change. The theme of G20, South Africa G20, is equality, solidarity and sustainability, which US President Donald Trump said that this theme does not align with the US's policy. So those are some of the things that will be discussed. And also we've been hearing from sources that, you know, the one thing that US was opposing, that's the climate change, that has been featured in the draft declaration. Today, there's going to be back-to-back meetings of leaders. There are 2 sessions that they will be heading. And in between the sessions, the leaders will make time for bilateral meetings between all the nations. So, Eric, a lot at stake for countries, especially South Africa, who says that it's not just South Africa's G20 Summit, but they will be representing all the African countries. Your African Union is here. Remember, during India's G20 presidency, African Union was granted a formal admission in the G20 group. So they are here. They will talk about the problems the global South, the developing countries and the African nation are facing. Ramaphosa has made it clear that this is going to be about how they are going to tackle a challenge in terms of debt sustainability in the continent, and also, trying to talk to the Western powers that, we have to work together. It has to be a summit, and there has to be equality between all the nations. So, Eric, it's a full day back-to-back meetings with all the nations.
Carden, I do understand that while leaders are there, including the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and also EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen and also Prime Minister of UK, Keir Starmer, it's quite significant when you have all these leaders, but only one person is missing.
Definitely, Eric. I think it's a show of force. It's high time, like some of the experts say, it's high time the world moved on without US. In fact, a few days back, the US, actually, Trump has warned South Africa not to issue a declaration. The US's Trump administration has gone on to say that, if South Africa comes up with a declaration from the summit, then it will be something that South Africa is going beyond the G20 tradition, because declaration is something that it has to be consensus. All the leaders of the country has to be present. But if you speak to some of the international relations experts here, they bluntly say US is not a party to the summit. Had they been here, it would have been a different situation. They would have deliberated, negotiated, but they are not here. So they cannot dictate and demand what South Africa should do and what South Africa shouldn't do. In fact, EU and South Africa have hosted several summits and also bilateral meetings. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has said it's a great news for South Africa. EU has announced big investments in Africa, in South Africa. So, and also France actually backing South Africa with its agenda, saying, we are fully there behind South Africa. We are rooting for you. The big nations, India says, has congratulated South Africa. In fact, Modi stating in his statement just in the recent days, even before he came here, stating South Africa has taken off from where actually the countries that previously hosted G20 Summit, like the global South countries like Indonesia, India, and Brazil, taking into consideration the problems of the global South and developing countries. South Africa has taken off exactly where they had ended the summit. So the nations are with South Africa. South Africa is confident. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says he's confident that they are going to have a declaration of the summit. And come what may, Ramaphosa has said that this summit is going to be a success for South Africa and Africa as a whole.
All right. The summit, the 2-day summit, has officially begun, and currently addressing the plenary is the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. That is our correspondent Carden Ongmu. Carden Ongmu, thank you.
Is to execute the task that we have come here for principally. I should precede this by remembering what a Roman philosopher